classes, and I hope that you are understanding what we are trying to teach you, and you have been revising it after the lecture. And today our topic that is to be discussed is pleural diseases. And as you know that the norms is that if there is any query, do text me at that time so that we clear it. All right. So can you hear me? And can you see the screen clearly? So we start our lecture. Great. Okay. So what is pleura? You all know that different organs are covered by different serous membranes. Like in abdomen, there's peritoneum. So in thorax, we have got pleura. The pleura is a serous membrane that covers the lung. All right. The parietal pleura folds back on itself at the root of the lung to become the visceral pleura. So it's the same layer which folds on itself to make two layers. One is parietal pleura and the other is visceral pleura. All right. And between these two pleura, there's a cavity which we call it as pleural cavity. All right. And in health, the two pleura are in contact. There's no air, there's only a film of fluid which cannot be aspirated. And it is there to avoid friction. All right. There are two pleural cavities. One is left and one is right, and both are not connected with each other. So pleural space is this potential space with a negative pressure in the in between visceral and parietal pleura. And as the name indicates, visceral pleura is the inner one which covers the lung, and the parietal pleura is the one which is over the visceral pleura. Okay. So as already been told, that pleural space is a potential space between visceral and parietal pleura, and there is a negative pressure. All right. The pressure becomes more negative during inspiration. It's become around minus 7.5 millimeters of mercury during inspiration. And while expiration, it becomes less negative. That is minus 5 millimeters of mercury. So there are two types of pressure in thorax. One is pleural pressure, which is negative and becomes more negative so that one can suck in air. All right. And the other is alveolar pressure, which is minus 1 millimeters of mercury during inspiration. And as we have to expire, so it becomes plus 1 during expiration so that we can breathe out. I hope it's clear. Now, what is the arterial supply of pleura? The arterial supply of visceral pleura is same that is of the lungs. Okay, the bronchial arteries, which arise from the thoracic aorta, and the arterial supply of parietal pleura is same as that of chest wall, that is intercostal nerves. All right. So my question is that no, okay. The pleura is from autonomic nervous nerves from the pulmonary plexus, which supply the lung, and that of parietal pleura is same as of so now the question is that which pleura is pain sensitive, visceral, parietal, or both? Yes. Parietal. Very good. Great. So these organs of body, they are not pain sensitive. If you cut the gut with a scissor, there will be no pain, but there are stretch receptors in the gut. In lung, there are no neurals, no pain receptors, but parietal pleura Yes, everyone is right. The parietal pleura is pain sensitive because it is supplied by the nerves which supply the chest wall. So what do you think that, okay, what kind of pain one experience when there is, when parietal pleura gets involved? Any idea? I repeat it, that what is the type of pain, what is the character of pain one experiences when parietal pleura get involved due to a disease? Okay, it's a sharp pain, but what do we call it? So as the name indicates that it involves the pleura, we call it a pleuratic type of chest pain. All right. And that is, you know that when we are taking history of pain, we want to know the site, size, as well as radiation and character. So we call it as pleural type of pain. Okay. And that is the pain which is, any idea? What do we call, what is pleuratic chest pain? Which get worse on taking a deep breath. Okay. So it aggravates by inspiration, because when we inspire, the pleura gets stretches and there is pain. All right. So the next question is that what type of pain mimics pleuratic chest pain? Any idea? This is general knowledge. This is not medical. Any other type of pain which get worse on taking inspiration, that is not a pleuratic chest pain. You people should start thinking like a clinician now. Anyone? MI pain? Well, that is intelligent thought, that myocardial infection or unstable angina get worse on walking. But that is not the correct answer. Gallbladder pain? No. It is the pain which is an abdomen, Murphy's sign, rib fracture. Yes, you are quite near. That is a muscular pain. All right. Anyone who is into workout will know that if you train a certain group of muscle and you are not accustomed, you are not familiar with that workout, you will have a muscular pain. So a muscular pain of chest will mimic a pleuratic pain, because when you take a deep breath, those muscles due to lactic acid will ache. All right. So there are many diseases of pleura. Pneumothorax. What is pneumothorax? Then there's pleural effusion. Then there's malignant mesothelioma, pleural plaques, dry pleurisy, and pleural fibrosis. Pneumothorax and pleural effusion we are going to discuss in detail, and a bit about malignant mesothelioma. So, any idea what is malignant mesothelioma? Hurry up, we have to catch up. We are getting late. What is malignant mesothelioma? Very good. It's a malignancy of the pleura. And what is the risk factor of that malignancy? Very good. Who was it? I think Ammon. Asbestos exposure. All right. So the next question is that the most common malignancy due to asbestos exposure is dash. The most common malignancy with asbestos exposure is, very good. Who is this? Hasna, Sidratul Muntaha, and Sayyid. It's bronchogenic carcinoma. So the most common malignancy with asbestos exposure is bronchogenic carcinoma, but malignant mesothelioma is the malignancy which only occurs due to exposure of asbestos. All right, so there's a difference between two. Then there are pleural plaques. Pleural plaques are also seen due to asbestos exposure. They might be benign, and they may get malignant also. All right. Then dry pleurisy. Dry pleurisy is due to some viral infections like there are many self-limiting viral infections which causes dry pleurisy. All right. And pleural fibrosis results due to long-standing effusion, which becomes fibrosed. All right. So, pleural effusion. Pleural effusion is abnormal accumulation of fluid in the pleural space. Excess fluid results from disruption of equilibrium that exists in the pleural membrane. Means that there is more fluid coming and less absorption of that fluid that causes accumulation of fluid. All right. And this fluid formation can be due to many mechanisms. Some of them are increased hydrostatic pressure, decreased colloidosmotic pressure, increased capillary permeability, passage of fluid through openings in the diaphragm, and reduction of pressure. All right. So there are many mechanisms which we are going to discuss. Now, this is not an X-ray. It's a diagram. All right. And this diagram is here just to show you that how does a pleural effusion looks like when you see an X-ray. All right. So I understand that you people have never seen an X-ray before. So whenever you are looking at an X-ray, mind you that it's not an X-ray. It's a diagram. Okay. So first of all, we want to know that which side is the right side and which side is the left side. So whenever there's X-ray in front of you, like this is in front of you, you just try to shake hand with it. So you expect that this person who is, or the X-ray will move his right side towards you. So my right side is left side of this X-ray. I think that you people must have understood it. If there are any doubts, you can ask me. Okay. So if you see that this is the right side, and you can see that trachea has divided, and there's upper lobe, middle lobe, lower lobe, and this is the whole lung. On this side, you can see the upper lobe. There's no middle lobe on the left side, and this is the lower lobe. But if you see this purple area, it's not the lung. Okay, lung is pink area. This purple area is fluid in the pleural space. All right. So normally pleural space cannot be seen. It can only be seen if there's any abnormality. Okay. And if I want to read this X-ray, okay, let's not read it. We will read it later in the lecture. So there are 4 types of fluid that can be accumulated in the pleural space. A serous fluid, serous means clear fluid, which we call hydrothorax. Then blood can accumulate, which we call hemothorax. Then chyle, which we call chylothorax, and pus, which is empyema. So the question is, what is chyle? Okay, I will move further and I am waiting for your answer. So whenever a patient comes to you with pleural effusion, there are 2 steps. Number 1 is to diagnose that whether there is accumulation of fluid or not, because you are suspecting it. So you have to know that whether fluid is present or not. And secondly, to determine the cause of that effusion. All right. semi-solid form of fluid. Wrong. Any other person? What is chylothorax? What is chyle? Okay. So whenever a patient comes to us in a clinic, he is telling you his diagnosis. Okay. If he is saying that I am having pain in my abdomen, okay, you will not suspect that this patient is having any pathology in his foot. Okay, you will concentrate that on his abdomen, that it might be appendicitis or a cholecystitis. All right. So history is the key to diagnosis. All right. So there are only 5 symptoms in the pulmonology. That is fever, cough, dyspnea, chest pain, weight loss, hemoptysis, etc. All right. And with these 5 symptoms, you need to reach diagnosis of around 300 different diseases. All right. Right. It's a milky white fluid that runs into the lymphatic channels, and it is called chyle. All right. And it arises from the Christina chyli into the thoracic duct, and if the thoracic duct gets ruptured, it causes emptying of this chyle into the pleura, and then we call it chylothorax. Very good. Okay, so the symptoms are dyspnea, okay, and depending upon the amount of fluid into the pleura, this dyspnea can be severe. All right, it can be exertional and it can be on rest. Okay, then chest pain. So the question is, what type of chest pain will a person with pleural effusion experience? Okay, and then the patient might be having cough. Okay, and the second question is that what the first one, the easier question was that what will be the character of the pain, because I have already answered that. Okay, and the second question is, will it be a productive cough or a dry cough? I'm waiting for your response, and I'll move further. Okay, then physical signs. Whenever we are seeing a patient, after taking a thorough history, we do a complete examination. Okay, so it will be a productive cough. It can be a productive cough. It can be a productive cough if the cause of effusion is due to a pathology in the lung. As we have already discussed in anatomy, that the pleura are not connected with the lung. All right. And pleural diseases are very strange diseases. I am calling them strange diseases because usually pleural effusion are not caused due to lung pathologies. Say a patient is having a carcinoma of kidney, metastasis will go into the pleura. Okay. A patient who is having heart failure, there will be transudative accumulation of fluid in the pleura. So pleural diseases can be due to lung pathology, but usually most of them are due to pathologies other than lung. And as the lung is not connected directly with the pleura, so there is no productive cough. It's usually a dry cough. So the patient presents with dyspnea, pleuritic chest pain, and dry cough. All right. Great. So the physical signs of pleural effusion is when you inspect the patient, the effective site might be bulged up due to accumulation of the fluid. When we palpate, we see that the trachea and the apex beat are pushed away. Okay. When we percuss, we do it with fingers, we strike it. And if there's air, it will be resonant. Resonant note is like it makes a hard sound, but in case of effusion, it will be dull. There's if there's fluid, there will be when you people will be come to your wards, we are going to teach you that. All right. On auscultation, at the site of effusion, there will be no breath sounds, and vocal resonance, it will be reduced or absent. Okay. I know that I am going a bit fast over here because we are going to do this thing in wards. Okay. So now, on the basis of history and examination, we are suspecting that this guy is having pleural effusion. So first of all, we need to know that whether there is effusion. Okay. And for that, and the second part will be that what is the cause of effusion so we can treat it. Okay. So for that, you need imaging studies. Okay. And that imaging study, the first one is chest radiography. Chest radiograph is quite effective. It has got, you can pick up effusion very, very easily with it. Then ultrasound can pick minimal fluid, and CT scan. Okay. So the primary diagnostic tool is chest radiograph. Okay. Chest radiograph needs around 500 ml of fluid to detect. If there's at least 500 ml, you can detect it in a PA view X-ray. All right. But if there's lesser fluid, you will need to have a lateral chest radiograph. Okay. So now, again, coming to this picture, this is not an X-ray. Okay. So you can see that the right side, there is an abnormality over here. And on the left side, the lung can be seen up to this place, which we call the costophrenic angle. This place is called the cardiophrenic angle. This is cardiophrenic angle, but the costophrenic angle is obliterated. So how will I read this X-ray? I read it like this, that there is a homogeneous opacity. Homogeneous means that same density in the right lower chest, okay, with obliteration of costophrenic angle. I cannot see the costophrenic angle, and there is a meniscus sign. Okay, there is no straight line. This sign, when there is a concavity inside, we call it a meniscus sign. Meniscus sign is present in free fluid. Okay, there might be loculated effusion, which causes a D sign, which we are going to show you. This is, but you have to concentrate on meniscus sign. All right. I hope it's clear. Okay. Now this is a real X-ray. All right. So there is a homogeneous opacity in the right middle and lower zone. The costophrenic angle and the cardiophrenic angle are obliterated, and I can see a meniscus sign. Clear? यार जल्दी जल्दी जवाब दिया करो. Good. Okay. So there is a homogeneous opacity in left, middle, and lower zone. The costophrenic angle and the cardiophrenic angle, fluid deposits down, are obliterated, and there is a meniscus sign. So what I'm saying is that I am seeing moderate effusion on the left side, and if I will explain it more, I will say that the trachea and heart is shifted towards the opposite side. You can see the spinous process. Trachea should be lying over that, but it is towards the right side. So this fluid has shifted the mediastinum away. Okay. We will skip this. This is a very large effusion which has pushed the mediastinum away and you cannot see any of the lung. Okay, so there's complete whitewash over the left side. And this is a loculated effusion, all right? And if I write a letter here, it's a straight line and this dome, so it's a D sign, okay? And if it were on the left side, it would have been a inverted D sign, all right? So it's a loculated effusion. Now this is the inverted D sign, all right? We'll skip this, we don't have enough time. So now, ultrasound is a technique which can detect as less as 5 to 50 ml of fluid, all right? CT scan chest is also a good modality to detect pleural fluid. So now, we have diagnosed that the patient who came to our clinic is having a pleural effusion, okay? So now the next step will be to take out this fluid. And this will be done with under ultrasound guidance, all right? And then we are going to send this fluid to laboratory and we will ask for a detailed report of that. So a detailed report will help us to classify that effusion, whether it's exudative effusion or a transudative effusion. And why do we want to do that? We want to do that because causes of both effusion are different. Any effusion which is rich in protein, if the protein content is more than 3 grams per, now this is all important stuff, okay? So if the protein content is more than 3 grams per deciliter, it's a clear exudative effusion, all right? And if the protein content is less than 2.5 grams per deciliter, that is transudative effusion, all right? But if the protein content is between 2.5 and 2.9 grams per deciliter, that's a gray area where you have to apply Light's criteria, all right? I repeat again, if the protein content of pleural fluid is more than 3 grams per deciliter, it's a clear-cut exudate. If it's less than 2.5, it's transudate. But if it's between 2.5 and 2.9, that is, you have to apply Light's criteria. Light's criteria has got 3 points, okay? The ratio of pleural fluid protein to serum protein, if it's greater than 0.5, that is exudative. If the ratio of pleural fluid LDH and serum LDH is greater than 0.6, that is an exudative pleural effusion. And if the pleural fluid LDH is greater than 2/3 times the normal upper limit of serum LDH, that is also an exudative effusion. Okay, so take a screenshot of it. So you have to memorize it. So if any of these criteria fulfills, that is an exudative effusion. A single criteria will label that effusion as an exudative effusion. Okay, so if protein content is more than 3 grams, we are not going to apply Light's criteria. If it's between 2.5 to 2.9, we are going to apply Light's criteria. And if any one of that criteria fulfills exudative, that will be an exudative effusion. Okay. So the causes of exudative pleural effusion are infections, malignancies, immune disorders, and there are some rare causes. Causes of transudative effusion are 2. One is increased hydrostatic pressure, okay? That can be due to renal failure, that can be due to congestive cardiac failure, all right? Any fluid overload, okay? And the second cause of transudative pleural effusion is decreased plasma oncotic pressure. That can be due to malabsorption, that can be due to nephrotic syndrome, that can be due to cirrhosis of the liver. All right. So as I already mentioned, that pleural fluid accumulates usually due to causes which are not in the thorax. All right. So now we have classified that whether this fluid is exudative or transudative. If it's transudative, we are going to work up for hypothyroidism. We are going on the basis of what we are suspecting in that patient. If the patient is having hypertension, diabetes, he is having edema, we are going for echocardiography. Okay, we can go for renal function test. We can go for liver function test. All right. And if the patient is having exudative pleural effusion, so depending upon our suspicion, we can send pleural fluid for culture if you are suspecting that this is pneumonic effusion. If you are suspecting that it is due to tuberculosis, we are going to stain that pleural fluid for AFB smear. We are going to send AFB culture. We are going to send gene expert Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Okay. If we are suspecting of if there's a female of 25 years who is having repeated abortions, and we are suspecting that she is having SLE, we are going to send ANA and LE cells. All right. Then if the patient, we are suspecting that it's due to pancreatitis, we will send amylase. If we are suspecting malignancy, we are going to send cytology. So we won't send all the diagnostic workup in every patient. Whatever we are suspecting, for that we are going to order the test. All right. Then if we don't reach a diagnosis, we go for pleural biopsy. All right. Pleural biopsy can be done via a blind needle, which we call Abrams biopsy needle, or through medical thoracoscopy, in which a fiber optic fluoroscope is inserted into the pleural space, and wherever there is lesion, that is taken out and sent for histopathology. So with that, we end the discussion about pleural effusion, and we have to hurry up a bit, all right, because we have to cover pneumothorax. So I hope there are no questions, or if there are any questions, you can ask now. So, okay, we will take some more time in your next class. If there are any questions regarding pleural effusion, kindly ask them now. I'm waiting for your questions. No questions? Great. So, oh, there's a question, I guess. It's not flow cytometry, it's cytology. Cytology is done in cases of malignancies. Any other question? Okay. So pneumothorax is presence of air into the pleural space. All right. Pneumothorax is more common in men than in women. Okay. The incidence is 18 to 28 per 100,000 men, and 1.2 to 2.6 per 100,000 in women per year. All right. Pneumothorax is classified into spontaneous and traumatic. Okay. Traumatic, as the word indicates, is due to a trauma. Okay. That trauma can be, sorry for that, that trauma can be iatrogenic or non-iatrogenic. Okay. What is iatrogenic? Can anyone tell? Iatrogenic is due to Yes, iatrogenic is due to error in caused by some medical intervention. Okay, like someone who is not familiar in doing a breast biopsy can rupture the pleura. Okay, endotracheal tube can cause pneumothorax. Okay, a central venous catheter can invade the pleura. Okay, a liver biopsy, it can cause pneumothorax. All right, iatrogenic can be accidental, and rarely we do create artificial pneumothorax. Okay, non-iatrogenic are usually due to accidents. Okay, they can be due to sharp injuries, and they can be due to blunt injuries in which the rib fractures, and the rib which causes lung damage, and the air from the lung accumulates into the pleura. Okay, so this traumatic pneumothorax is out of scope of our this lecture. We will be focusing on spontaneous pneumothorax. A spontaneous pneumothorax is the pneumothorax in which there is no trauma. Okay, and that spontaneous pneumothorax can be classified into primary and secondary. Secondary pneumothorax is due to diseases of the lung. Okay, and primary pneumothorax in which we are unable to reach, or there is no underlying disease. Okay. Causes of secondary spontaneous pneumothorax, very simple. All the causes, all the diseases of the lung can cause pneumothorax. The most common cause of secondary spontaneous pneumothorax is COPD. All right, but it can be caused due to any of pulmonary pathology. All right. Causes of iatrogenic pneumothorax, we have already discussed. So what are the symptoms of pneumothorax? Symptoms of pneumothorax is sharp, sudden onset chest pain with dyspnea. Okay, and depending upon the amount of air, it can be, patient can be very dyspneic. Okay, there's a term which is called as tension pneumothorax, in which there is a one-way valve from the lung into the pleura, in which every breath more air is entering the pleura but is unable to go out into the lung. So the pleural pressure keeps off increasing to an extent that it becomes more than atmospheric pressure, and after that the whole lung gets collapsed on the effective side, and when it gets more worse, it will squash the lung, the opposite lung also, and the great vessels also. All right, and the patient can die if we don't do an intervention. All right, the physical signs are that there might be a bulge on the effective side, and there will be mediastinal shift towards the opposite side, and because there is more air, so the percussion note will be more hyper resonant. All right, again, this is not an X-ray, it's a diagram. In pleural effusion, we know that air accumulates, the fluid accumulates due to gravity, it accumulates downwards. But in pneumothorax, if there is a small pneumothorax, the air will be on the top of the lung. All right. So here we can see pneumothorax on the right side. Okay. Now this is an X-ray. I think that it is not a very good X-ray. Okay, now Which side is affected? Hurry up. Right side or left side? Where's the pathology? Left, right. Good. Tuba and Hasna Adil. Patient's left, no. It's on the right side. So pleural effusion is very easy to pick because in pleural effusion, you are seeing something which is white on a background of black. But here on the background of black, you have to see more black thing. So this is the normal side where you can appreciate the bronchovasculature. All right. But on the right side, if I see that we need to have three things in a pneumothorax. There is a hyperlucentation. You cannot see the collapsed lung border because it is all pushed. Okay. We will skip this. Okay. This is not an X-ray. It's just for understanding. It's a CT scan. On the right side, you can see a jet black area, divide of lung marking, and collapsed lung border. Okay. So the management is different from primary spontaneous pneumothorax and for secondary spontaneous pneumothorax. If a patient who is not having underlying lung disease and patient is not dyspneic and it's a small pneumothorax, we will just reassure the patient and we can even discharge him with a written advice that if he gets breathless, he can visit a hospital or emergency again. All right. But if a patient who is dyspneic, we won't leave him alone. Okay. What we are going to do, first of all, we are going to aspirate air. Okay. If we aspirate 2.5 liters of air in someone who is not having a pneumothorax without an underlying lung disease, and he is still dyspneic, we are going to pass a chest tube. Okay. Indication is tension pneumothorax, bilateral pneumothorax, recurrent pneumothorax, presence of dyspnea, failed manual aspiration. Okay. In primary spontaneous pneumothorax. Okay. And if a patient who comes to if he presents with secondary spontaneous pneumothorax, our goal will be to put a chest drain inside. All right. But if the pneumothorax is very small, that is less than 1 centimeter on the X-ray, then we won't be able to put a chest tube because we are going to damage the lung. All right. So in primary spontaneous pneumothorax, we will try not to do any intervention. And if needed, first we are going to aspirate the pneumothorax. But in secondary spontaneous pneumothorax, if the pneumothorax allows us means that if it's the rim is more than 1 centimeter, we are going to put a chest drain in. And why we are going to do that? Because we have to do a pleurodiscus. Pleurodiscus means that we are going to close his pleural space so that he does not develop pneumothorax again. Because this time he was lucky to reach the facility, but maybe next time he might not be able to reach. So if someone who is having recurrent pneumothorax on the epilateral side, on the same side, or if the patient had a pneumothorax on the contralateral side, or if the patient is having bilateral pneumothorax or if the patient is having secondary spontaneous pneumothorax. We are going to do a fluid assist. And what we do in the fluid assist? In fluid assist, we put irritating agent into the pleural space after the pneumothorax or after the pneumothorax have resolved, and due to that chemical, there is irritation, and due to that irritation, there will be inflammation, and due to the inflammation, the visceral and parietal pleura will fuse together, and that pleural space will become obliterated. All right. Agents used for chemical fluoridesis are tetracycline, talc, a drug known as bleomycin, etc. So if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. Well in time. Any questions? Are there any questions? No? So I hope that you all have understood, and I think that this was the last lecture of pulmonology in third year. I think that to the best of my knowledge, this was the end of the module. Yes, the pleural will not become fibrous, but the pleural space will become obliterated. Lung cancer is a layman term and bronchogenic carcinoma is a medical term. So these are synonymous. Thank you.
सर एंड कर दूं क्लास?
देख लेते हैं, कोई और सवाल तो नहीं है।
ओके सर,
मेरे ख्याल में नहीं है। चले,
जी
थैंक यू वेरी मच, थैंक यू वेरी मच।